Hey, good to see you. So if you see runners and you do running gait analysis, you will get asked this question. Is my running the same on the treadmill as it is outside? And that's a really good question to have a really good answer for. And not just a good answer, but one that is based in research. So when you get this question, a lot of runners are really asking you, if you're not looking at the way I run outside or overground, how do you know that's actually the way I'm running? And you'll hear them talk about, well, I feel awkward on a treadmill, or I don't feel comfortable when I run on a treadmill. These are all things that it's really good to have good formed answers for. So let's talk about the very first thing. Is treadmill running versus overground running affecting the biomechanics or not? And the answer to that is largely biomechanics remain the same between treadmill and overground running. However, there are a couple key differences in how you can minimize those key differences in biomechanics so that you are getting the most accurate data from your runners when you're looking at a running gait analysis. So let's start with what happens when people Google what is treadmill and outdoor running and what are the differences. So I just want to go through this a little bit so we know what our runners are going to come in with a little bit of knowledge. We can see Asics, Nike, Very Well Fit. A lot of people are having answers to this. And you can see through a lot of this information here that some of it's saying, well, if you're training for a race or want to see greater benefits in terms of muscle tone, then running outside is better fit for you. Okay, well, we have some research that might disagree with that. However, it's good to know what people are asking and why. This is Nike, what you need to know. And they're talking about how running on a treadmill can be a good starting point, but running outdoors engages a wider range of muscles. And then Very Well has pros and cons. And they go on to talk about how different muscles are also engaged when you're running outside. So we see a little bit of a common theme. So before we get into some of the things that are commonly known or out on the internet about running over ground versus running on the treadmill, let's base our answer in research. And this is a really good article that I'm referencing here, and this article has a great image. And this image, if you haven't seen it before, this is a really good image to be able to take and really dissect and be able to understand how running on treadmill and running outdoors or overground are different and similar. So first, I want to go through this image so you can kind of dissect it and understand it a little bit better. So the very first thing I want to talk about is a couple key things here. You can see that all of this says in the bold colors, it says all, and in some of these gray colors, it says a little bit lighter, track, concrete, lab, runway. So these are all different surfaces. I want to talk about the all surfaces. So that's the main thing. And then also you'll see here, some of it says, but trivial magnitude. Or you'll see some of it, again, says trivial magnitude. So I don't want to worry about those. I want to talk about the key findings here so that we can take these clinical pearls and truly understand how it's going to affect our runners. So the first one I want to talk about is that on the treadmill, we see a decreased vertical displacement. So we see that runners are not going up and down, or they're measuring at their center of mass is not going up and down as much when they're running on a treadmill. Now, there can be a couple reasons for that. One of the main reasons that we're seeing in the research is that this is due to the fact that runners are just running with a higher cadence, a higher step rate. That higher step rate is not causing them to leap as far to get to that next step, and that is actually causing them to have less vertical displacement. The other key finding that I want to go over is that there is a decrease in peak propulsive forces. And again, we see that that is due to a higher cadence, a higher step rate. You don't have as long of a stride. You are not pushing as hard on the treadmill to propel yourself forward because you're not leaping forward as far. Again, you are seeing that you're just not putting as much force into your running because you're running at a higher cadence. There's a couple other key findings, but we don't have answers to all of these. And some of those are a decreased knee flexion, range of motion, and stance. So, of all these findings, we see a lot of them are centered around the fact that increased cadence or high cadence is a reason for these changes on the treadmill versus outdoor running or overground running. Well, here's the reason why. What we suspect, and the research shows, is that actually the increase in cadence is caused by the fact that you are running and you are actually more apprehensive or a little more awkward on the treadmill. Back to what those runners were actually talking about when they were hesitant to run on a treadmill to get their gait analyzed in the first place. Actually, some of it is actually true. It's the fact that when you run on a treadmill, you have a couple things that happen. One is that you perceive yourself going faster, and that perceiving that you're going faster is actually causing you to run with a little bit more of a higher step rate because you're a little concerned you're going faster, you might fall off the treadmill, there's a narrow amount of space on the treadmill, you can't put your foot too far to the side, otherwise you'll fall off, and obviously no one wants to fall off the treadmill. The other thing is that some people are just more comfortable or more familiar with running on a treadmill. And there's some ways that we can combat that. But to summarize here, we see that there's a decrease in vertical displacement and a decrease in peak propulsive forces when people run on a treadmill because they are not as familiar with the treadmill and also because they are perceiving that they're going faster. So how can we minimize some of these findings, or how can we minimize some of these issues that are happening on a treadmill to be able to help runners run accurately and get good information of how they're running on that treadmill versus how they're running on overground or outside? And that is that we want to closely match the runner's outdoor surface stiffness with the treadmill. So if most runners are running on concrete or asphalt, we want to make sure we're choosing a treadmill that has a firm surface. It's hard to find different values of treadmills out there, so what I'll tell you is try to find a treadmill that's just not soft. Those soft, springy treadmills might feel good to a lot of people, but they're not going to be an accurate depiction of someone running on concrete or asphalt or in everyday life. The other key finding is that treadmills oftentimes have fluctuations in their belt speeds. And these fluctuations then can cause a little bit of slippage when the belt is on the treadmill and the actual treadmill itself then slips and doesn't quite get a good hold. It can really jar the runners running. Many of us have run on treadmills like this, and you can feel them recalibrating and slipping, and they're not fun to run on. It's oftentimes that treadmill that is at the gym that gets used a lot. But the other thing that we often find with these treadmills is that they are just underpowered. And maybe that's because those gym treadmills have had their motors wear out and they're just not as strong anymore. I don't want to hypothesize about what's going on with the gym treadmills. What I do want to emphasize here is that you kind of get what you pay for with this. With good treadmills at a high quality, you see that they have good motors that are able to keep that belt speed at a constant, and that's what we want. Now, most commonly, we see these belt fluctuations happening in runners that are heavier or running at a higher rate of speed because they have higher braking forces and higher propulsion forces. So again, think about the runners you see. Maybe you need a medium quality treadmill because you're seeing runners that are running at lower speeds, but maybe you do see higher performance athletes that you want to make sure you have the best treadmill for them. And then lastly, we talked about this a little bit before, but the familiarization and comfort with running on a treadmill. Now, this can be a tricky thing, and there is varying levels of familiarization that we can give runners to run on a treadmill. And it can be as simple as, hey, I want you to just familiarize yourself with the treadmill, run on it for a couple minutes, and then we'll take the running gait analysis. However, the standard that we see is that approximately 8 minutes is what we want for runners to be able to familiarize themselves with the treadmill. Some people need longer, some people don't need any time at all, but if you give the runner about 8 minutes to be able to familiarize themselves, that can help a lot. So let's get into specific brands that can help runners and can be really good for runners. Now, I will warn you here that it can be hard to find a good treadmill that fits you. and maybe budget is a concern. There's different prices, and you want to think about those different treadmills that are out there. You want to get a good quality treadmill. You get what you pay for, but not all treadmills are created equal. You also want to think about treadmills with removable arms if that's a concern, or if that is the style that you have, because you're going to want to video that person running from the side. So that's a very, very important thing, to be able to have access to view the patient running. The other thing you want to be mindful of is a flat running surface, and again, those variable speeds. Maybe you have runners that run very fast or very slow. Make sure you have treadmill that accommodates to all those speeds. So here's some really good brands that I like. Soul is one of them, and I've just got it open here. You can see they have different types of treadmills that are available, and these vary on the display mainly. So it may not be that much of a benefit to you to get a $3,000 treadmill here rather than the $1,700 treadmill. Another good brand that I like is this one, and that's called Landice. I like this one. It's very standard. As you can see, it is a bit pricier. It is certainly a good quality treadmill, but it is trying to get all of that mimicking outdoor running. It's trying to be very stable. It's trying to do all those things that's going to make for a good running gait analysis. So here's another brand that you can consider. And then lastly, Nordic Track. A lot of us have heard of Nordic Track. They have a lot of different options. Now, these can really vary from approximately $1,600 to $2,500, and I'm sure there's some pricier models out there like this $4,500 one. But look around, see what works for you, see what fits in your space, and then also think about if you want to see runners running on incline or not. Is that important to you, or is that something clinically relevant? I don't know. So with all this information, it is really, really tempting to buy a low-cost treadmill to start analyzing gait. But the better quality is really going to make it so that you do have good information and good data that you're collecting. And learning what treadmill to actually buy is part of our continuing education course, The Essentials of Running Gait Analysis. So check it out if it's something that would be applicable to you, or if you find this content helpful. The next step would be to be taking a course or to get certified as a running expert. So take a look at all that information. Until next time, learn all this great information so you can go help your runners, and we're excited to see you soon. Take care.